As our Chief Law Enforcement Officer for the state, Attorney General Harris has devoted much of her career to championing the rights of victims and focusing on fighting all violent crime. It is clearly my honor to have her here with us this morning to commemorate Victims' Rights Month, and it is now my privilege to introduce you to our Attorney General, Kamala Harris.
Thank you, Julie, for your leadership, and Anna Caballero for your leadership. I'm honored to be with you this morning, and I want to start my comments by thanking each one of you. It takes an incredible amount of courage to do what you do. Having the experiences that you've had, being with loved ones who have had and faced some of the most worst of human behavior, and to come out and to keep coming out, to be a voice for voiceless and vulnerable people, to be a voice for people that most of you will probably never meet, and those people will never know your names, but because of your advocacy and your courage and your hard work, their lives will forever be better and be benefited. So I want to thank you all for the work you do, because when it comes to talking about the need to protect and keep safe and give dignity to survivors of crime, we know that we have to approach it in a way that understands the real stories. And this is not something that should be the subject of ideology or some philosophical debate. It's about real people who have had real experiences and deserve to be treated and be brought back to whole and given the support and the strength and the dignity they deserve. So I thank you all for that work. I'm very honored to be the Attorney General of the state of California. As many of you know, I'm a career prosecutor. I started my career right out of law school at the Alameda County DA's office. I've personally prosecuted everything from low-level offenses to homicide. And so when I think about the need to support our victims, it is thinking about and knowing real stories and the experience that victims of crime have, both in terms of the conduct that brought them to the criminal justice system, but also the process by which we seek and obtain justice and accountability and consequence for offenders. Part of the work that we have been doing has been based, most recently in the AG's office, has been based on a lot of the long-standing advocacy that you all have been putting into issues such as human trafficking. Human trafficking is an issue that we have been addressing over the course of the last 2 years for a number of reasons. In fact, the first official trip I took as Attorney General was down to Calexico, because I wanted to see the tunnels down there that connect California with Mexico. Of course, on the Mexico side of Calexico is Mexicali. And when I went down to those tunnels, I saw some photographs of tunnels with walls as smooth as the walls in any of our living rooms. And those walls were lined with lighting and air conditioning, which made a very obvious point clear. What was being traveled and trafficked through those tunnels was about people making a whole lot of money in the trafficking of guns and drugs and human beings. The big burly guards down there with tears in their eyes told me of stories of children as young as 5 years old being trafficked through those tunnels. So we decided last year to commission a report in my office in the California Department of Justice, one hadn't been done in 5 years, on the state of human trafficking in California. And there were a number of maybe not so surprising revelations. One, over 60% of the victims of human trafficking in California are born right here in the United States. The other thing we know is that up to 40% of the crimes that are associated with the trafficking of those human beings are forced labor. The other thing we realized is that we've got to do a lot more to support local law enforcement in its quest and desire to address this issue, equal to any other issue we address in a local police department, for example. Why? Because part of the information we gathered showed us that the cartels are increasingly involved in human trafficking, and so are the criminal street gangs. to the point that we now have criminal street gangs who have figured out that it is more profitable and lower risk to traffic in human beings than it is in guns and drugs. We're seeing for the first time criminal street gangs who otherwise were territorial and did not get along, but are getting along when they start trading the commodity, which is the human being that is being trafficked. So the work we have to do on that is realizing that, we have rightly and understandably thought about human trafficking as a human rights issue, but I'd suggest that we also think about it as a core law enforcement public safety issue that deserves and requires our attention and our advocacy. And I know all of you have been doing that work, recognizing that it is something that is emerging as an issue that is victimizing a lot of very vulnerable and voiceless people. So I thank you for your advocacy with that. I thank you also for the advocacy that you have shown around the need to take seriously the testing of DNA. When I first came in office in January of 2011, I met with a number of you, and you pointed out to me that there was a backlog of rape kits, almost 1,300, that had not been tested in my office. You pointed out to me that it was taking 3 to 4 months to test those kits. And as a career prosecutor, I understood quite well what you were talking about, because we know if law enforcement is relying on that kit, it is probably because the perpetrator was unknown to the victim, and we need to establish identity. And one day going by without that person being caught is one day of terror in the life of that victim. And it is one day where that perpetrator is out on the streets thinking they got away with it and doing God knows what. So we created a priority around that because of your advocacy, and I'm proud to tell you, as of the end of last year, we eliminated the backlog entirely, and there is no more and will be no more backlog of DNA testing in the California Department of Justice. And again, that was because of your advocacy. And so I'm going to close my comments by saying this. This is the power that we have when we look around on a beautiful morning like this, and just look around, everyone, look around. Because the point here is to remember you are not in it alone. We are all in this together. And we stand together. We will fight together. We will do all that is necessary to be organized to make sure that victims of crime and survivors have a voice, and a strong voice, that will continue to support them. So I thank you all for your courage and your leadership. Thank you.